Oh, hi! I didn't see you there. I'm Philbert D, and I'm kind of running out of things to say in these intros, so this is Phil on Films. This week, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Weathering with You, and exclusive to SM Cinemas, Good Boys.
To my right is Bounty Law series lead and Jake Cahill himself, Rick Dalton. And to my left is Rick's stunt double, Cliff Booth. So, Rick, explain to the audience exactly what it is a stunt double does.
Actors are required to do a lot of dangerous stuff. Cliff here is meant to help carry the load.
Is that how you describe your job, Cliff?
What, carrying his load? Yeah, it's about right.
Leonardo DiCaprio is Rick Dalton, a television star whose fortunes have faded. Brad Pitt is Cliff Booth, Rick's stunt double and right-hand man. The film catches up with them in 1969, where Dalton has mostly been showing up in guest spots on other TV shows. He's considering taking his career in a different direction, but he's suffering from a serious case of self-doubt. Meanwhile, in these waning years of Hollywood's golden age, something sinister is starting to rise.
Hey! You're Rick fucking Dalton. Don't you forget it.
This was kind of a polarizing experience for me. Now, the stuff I like, I really like. When the film really gets going, when it's in the thick of having Rick Dalton trying to find a sense of redemption, when it has Cliff Booth as a cowboy basically walking into a dangerous situation, it all crackles to life on screen. These are strong characters, and they're brought to life with exceptional performances from both DiCaprio and Pitt. DiCaprio creates this clear delineation between the cowboy persona of the on-screen Rick Dalton and the mess of insecurities that he is off-screen. And Pitt's effortless star power hasn't been harnessed as effectively since the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. So I think that stuff is great, but then there's the other stuff. A lot of this film is just driving around LA, listening to the radio. This all just seems to be part of this nostalgia for American monoculture. That time when there were just a few TV channels and radio stations and the entire populace was listening to or watching all the same things. Now, Tarantino has always been self-indulgent, but here it does feel like he's gone a bit overboard, bombarding the audience with the remnants of a pop culture past without really conveying its value. You do end up feeling the length of the film, and a lot of it has to do with that. By the end, I do think the movie starts to get really infectious, but also kind of troubling. It's just a little weird. Tarantino, for the first time in his film career, conveys this ideological conservatism that puts him squarely on the side of a powerful establishment. I also have some pretty complicated feelings about its treatment of real-life people. The movie bordering on caricature in their depiction while allowing its white male heroes to have these richer inner lives. So yeah, I have some mixed feelings about this movie, even though I do think there's a lot of value in it. 3.5 stars.
これは僕と彼女だけが知っている世界の秘密についての物語だ。
The movie follows the teenager Hodaka, voiced by Kotaro Daigo. He's run away from home and is trying to eke out a living in Tokyo. Despite being the summer, the city is taking on an unprecedented amount of rain. The only time sunlight breaks through the clouds seems to be due to the prayers of Hina, voiced by Nana Mori. She is able to make the rain stop for short periods of time, and the two money-strapped teenagers turn her magical ability into a business. But there's a price to be paid for bringing sunlight into the world, and the two are made to pay it. There's nothing more important in the stories of Makoto Shinkai than young love. Not just love, mind you, but young love. The unsullied romance between characters too young to have really experienced any heartache. The kind that feels courageous in the moment and perhaps foolish in retrospect. The characters run up against these disproportionately humongous crises that cause death and destruction. But all that really matters in the end is that these two kids are able to tell each other what they really feel. It's worth breaking down the portrait of youth that this movie presents. A lot of this movie is actually just them trying to find jobs. And though the film ascribes magical reasoning behind it, they inherit a world where the weather has gone crazy, where the climate has changed. These characters are kind of just standard anime archetypes, but the film is intent on grounding them on real-life neuroses. In as much as this is a fizzy romance, it's also this lament for a younger generation that will be called on to try and fix a world that they didn't break. The plot does get a little messy, the movie taking on a few too many subplots and side characters. But through it all, the movie is able to keep its momentum through the rush of that young love. And because it's Makoto Shinkai, it's obviously very pretty. And the soundtrack will probably encourage some of you to learn Japanese. Now, I'm not entirely comfortable with what the film ends up saying, but I kind of like that. I like that the film is so willing to say some unexpected, maybe controversial things, that it's so willing to stick to its guns. I appreciate that even though I'm not super convinced that the film is really able to express it fully. 4 stars.
As you know, I am one of the producers on your movie Good Boys. Those were vases. Anyway, you guys cannot watch the trailer for your own movie.
What? Are you serious? Are you kidding?
You're too young.
Jacob Tremblay, Keith L. Williams, and Brady Noon are the Beanbag Boys, a trio of 12-year-olds who have been friends since kindergarten. They've been invited to their first kissing party, thrown by the coolest kid in 6th grade, and the heady mix of excitement and nervousness leads them into a series of hijinks that really test the resolve of these hopelessly naive young boys. So, take your average raunchy teenage comedy and replace the main characters with 12-year-old boys, and you're close to what we get in this film. But it doesn't quite stop there. These children aren't written to be just shorter analogs to their teenage counterparts. There's a lot that they don't know. And a lot of the comedy comes from the tension between the world as they perceive it through their relatively innocent eyes and the world as it really is. So everything seems bigger. They aren't just trying to kiss this one girl, they think that that girl will be the one they end up with forever. Taking sips of beer becomes this like epic test of toughness, and 4 miles feels like an insurmountable distance. Through it all, the movie is able to keep itself really good-hearted, finding this solid narrative foundation and this pure little friendship between 3 boys who are growing up in different directions. The plot does get a little strained, especially when the characters are arguing over the correct course of action. Some of that conflict just feels manufactured. But when the movie is just being funny, it's pretty great. Tremblay, Williams, and Noon are funny little kids, and their confident performances just go a long way. 3.5 stars. I have some answers. I guess you have some questions. B and S. Do you know other film critics like Oggs Cruz or Rappler, and do you compare film reviews with them? I do know Oggs. I know Wango Galiaga. We all go to the same screenings because we're all invited to the same screenings. And no, I don't really compare. Like we argue if we're in person sometimes and we disagree on something, or if we agree on something, we'll just start talking about the movie, jumping on each other. Hey, you remember that part? That part was so amazing. Hey, you know what I really liked about that thing? But no, I barely read other film reviews now at this point, except for like films I really, really love. Like I want to see what other people have to say about it. But yeah, sometimes I check on Oggs for stuff that I didn't get to see, just to see where we are with Filipino cinema, because he usually gets to see some things that I don't. So that's worth checking out. But other than that, yeah. I do know everybody, and our arguments are hilarious. More than one person asked me to give my thoughts about Eric Mati's Filipino cinema current situation Facebook post. Well, the thing is, like, we're coming from completely different perspectives. He's in the industry. He's actually a producer. He works with people, and he interacts with more industry professionals than I do. So if he says that like everybody's kind of scared to do new things, then that's probably valid. Speaking as just a viewer, I don't know, there are films I liked, there are films I don't like. It felt like the pitches being sent to festivals before were more adventurous, whereas now it does feel like people have an idea of what a Filipino festival film is supposed to be like, and they're mostly trying to pitch that. They already know what kind of budgets they're working with, and it's a lot of the same people. And I guess it's not as exciting for me as it was like in, say, 10 years ago. But I'm old, so what do I know? The thing is, yeah, I mean, Eric's a producer, and if he wants to make crazier films, he can. He just has to risk like losing money, because that's the crux of it. The real fear is that nobody's making any films that make any real money, unless you're Hello Love Goodbye. So if he says we're in a coma, sure, I can't really disagree. Keanu Shrug asks, what does the allegedly huge success of the latest Star Cinema offering mean for local cinema? Is it time to celebrate the resurrection of the industry, or is it just the result of the giant corporations and theater owners taking advantage of our fandom-driven movie viewing habits? Okay, sure. I mean, that's kind of a leading question. Obviously, you have your answer already. Like, that's what you think. But I mean, I genuinely like Hello Love Goodbye. I do think it was Star Cinema trying harder. Calling for, like, one film will never be the resurrection of an industry. We've had plenty of one films that seem to be like, oh, this is the way forward, this is what we're gonna do. And it never really works out. Has there been a second Kita Kita? No. Has there been a second Maximo Oliveros? No. So, here's the thing. I'm a film critic, and I want Filipino film industry to be booming and great and whatever, because that means more good films for everybody. But like, in the end, all I'm really just, I can just take things one movie at a time and say whether I like them or not. I generally don't think about the larger consequences of the success of these films, because I like a lot of films that don't make any money, because that's what I do. Thanks for joining us. I'm gonna leave a little reminder for you guys this week. The Silent Film Festival is running at Mega Mall, I think. You can check online, just search for the International Silent Film Festival. And culture yourselves with films. Like and subscribe, leave a comment, ask your questions. And until next time, goodbye, Internet. Pato doesn't know anything.